I think there's a healthier chunk of this that's actually jealous of BitBoy or Crypto Wendy than not.
You're jealous?
You're jealous?
Really?
Okay. Do you see the shenanigans that he get and the trouble that BitBoy Crypto gets himself
I
into?
wouldn't have touched his last project, and I don't know what she's up to. But I'm not jealous of who they are or what they put out. I'm jealous of they found the formula. They're willing to welcome the haters. They're just doing what they're doing, and it's paying off. That shit pays off if you can handle the stress.
Yeah, but at some level, do you really want to like sell your soul? You know, do you want to be a clown?
Because there are genuinely people who want to kill BitBoy. Like,
Jesus. I'll be right back. I gotta shut a door.
Do you say that because that's you, my friend?
No, I never really listened to anything he said, but I've seen enough of crypto Twitter to know that there are people who genuinely hate his soul and wish him harm.
But are you one of them, Aussie?
No, that's exactly what I said when he asked me.
Oh, really?
No, I do not.
But so what? And this is a question I got involved in a conversation like yesterday or the day before with somebody, and the big question, they were like, this thing is going on in the world. Did you see what's going on in the power elite and all, some of these conspiracies that go on? And my big question is whether or not it's true. So what? So what? Do I want to give that energy? So when I think about like, do I, if I were BitBoy, whatever, Brian, whatever his real name is,
Ben? Yeah, it's Ben.
Ben Johnson or something. It's a pretty basic name, Ben something.
He's very white.
He is very white. Now, what I'm not jealous of is the thing that got him to that level of popularity. If he were to say, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, one should be willing to build a platform at almost any cost. And because the power of a platform, once it's there, you can wield it for good. And you say that on one hand, it's like, yeah, let's do it. But imagine him suddenly changing his tune and now saying intelligent things, encouraging quality discourse, encouraging quality technical analysis, and not shilling. He would lose his audience, so he's kind of trapped by his own success. And so you do want to be careful about that. But I don't think it's unappealing because he has haters. I think
it's great that he has haters. I mean, that's a signal that he's doing something right.
Yeah. I mean, they're on CNBC. I just saw Crypto Wendy on a clip. She's on CNBC, one of the financial shows with several other talking heads. And it's like, well, that just is fame. You're just chasing fame. And it's the access and the leverage to do the other stuff I really want to do. But that could be its own trap. That could be its own thing. So I'm going to dive.
Traps.
I was going to make one about diving. You want to dive right in to?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about
dive deep?
Traps?
God.
You want to dive deep about the Titan, or we just?
We've got Aussie to say God and good Lord. We're on 2. We're not going to stop the conversation until we hit 5. Okay. All right.
That's too funny. So we have to talk about it briefly, though, only because we find it interesting. So you guys caught wind that they had a strong suspicion last Sunday that the implosion had already happened. They knew.
Yeah. I mean, on Mario Narwhal's Twitter space, he got...
His name is Narwhal?
Narwhal. I can't actually pronounce it right. I don't know. Give me a break. I'm a white Canadian.
No, I thought you were going to make a whale joke.
Good Lord, Grant.
There's three.
We got 2 more. 2 more on Aussie. We can't change the subject until we get it out of him.
But family members came and joined them on a 2 or 3 hour long Twitter space.
Oh.
And the family members, and this was 2 or 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And the family members literally said the most likely scenario is that they exploded. That they imploded. And that the Titan had imploded, and they were already aware of that as being the most likely scenario. And so the family was expecting this result, at least, which means that it was probably the top working theory for the Coast Guard and the Canadian search and rescue teams.
So okay, let's just like hyper skip ahead to like the drama, because I want to ask you guys a question on your take on this. So we know that like search was happening for like 4 days. They hit the 96-hour mark. Okay, we're going to give up searching. And there was never once in the headlines, for me anyway, the possibility that this had already gone down on Sunday, the previous day. And so it felt to me like the headlines were. We heard banging, and well, who said that? Marissa, what was the magazine that said the banging? Rolling Stone, like the journalistic story of all time. Lindsay, are we talking about the submarine briefly? I know we're supposed to be talking about crypto, but this is also not crypto, bros and gals. And this is really salient. So Rolling Stones makes the announcement because of their scientific inquiry that they're hearing banging, and they're the first to report this. We all buy into this kind of pseudo-adventure narrative of what's going on. I wish the Coast Guard and the military had released the information that they knew about on Sunday. They found some of the wreckage within minutes. They had and this implosion thing. Here's my thing. I want to jump ahead and ask this question. Okay, highs and lows, whether you're for it or not. Some people are saying this shouldn't get critiqued for the families. But like the other side of this is, okay, let's be respectful, but like these were people who were doing hoity-toity travel. Why are we making this such a big deal? And this is obviously a massive risk. So like, are you guys critical or not critical of this whole journey?
I mean,
wait, Aussie, before you answer, can you ask that in a different way?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm understanding the question.
So I don't know if I should fall into the dark humor about all this, because this would be absolutely terrifying to me. I told Marissa, would I rather explode, suffocate, or implode? I'd rather explode, top way to go, because you don't feel it. Then I'd rather suffocate because you kind of fall asleep over time, right? You're like, oh, my brain's gone, and you kind of get high, and then you're like gone. And if you've ever had a near drowning experience, you kind of know what I mean. And then imploding is nightmare fuel to me, because this thing crunches in, and if you are unfortunate enough not to go immediately, you're still aware, then you drown, and it's just this nightmarish thing. And like the stories of the son going like, I don't want to go, but my dad's really insisting because I want to get close to my dad. And it's like, I would not do this. Like Jarrett can't convince me to go skydiving. This is not one of these things. So, there's some of my friends have gotten on and been like, I'm not going to give this another moment in the headlines because these people knew the risks. This guy fired the engineer. These people should get criticized for what they were doing, not like, oh, we're going to miss them. So that's what I mean. Like, are you critical? Do you not care? Or where are you at? Go, Jarrett.
Okay, yeah, so I'm understanding your question now. And first of all, I want to shout out Trevor Talley, who had the crying emoji. Then I want to shout out Lindsay's comment, and then I'm going to make my comment here. Lindsay says, hell yeah, I love this. Saw a lot of experts and people who knew about these kind of things say they thought it had exploded, but didn't see anything from the media.
Yeah.
I also want to shout out Lindsay for being on LinkedIn and being more professional and less degen.
Oh my
God! Goodness! He's tall.
I'm not hating. I'm not hating. I'm boosting her up. Lindsay knows she needs to spend more time on LinkedIn and less time on Twitter. This is good. I like to see her here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay's somewhere rolling her eyes, and that's fine. So I think that this is your question here, Grant, is a really salient one, because we're going to continue as humans to run into this question as we move forward, as interplanetary, as space travel happens, right? As the millionaires and the billionaires and the 1%ers start to basically put themselves into high risk situations under the guise of exploration and adventure, right? Like, this is not the last time we're going to see something like this happen.
No.
That's going to be put on by a private company where normal individual private citizens, retail investors, I guess we could say, are going to be like, yeah, I want to do this. Like, there will be some disaster tied to, Elon, and when he's taking people around
SpaceX,
when he's just trying to do an orbit of the moon, and it's like, $2 million for a seat, right? And it's going to be 3 hours long. This is what happens when
the Tesla self-driving semis. They're going to have something, and someone's going to get hurt. I mean, it's just it's inevitable. Yeah.
Sure, there's that, but I'm thinking more of like the things that very few people of us are going to be able to do to even have this like on our table. Like going down in this submarine in OceanGate, like there's not the amount of people that can actually do this and have the money on the planet are a percent of 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 a percent. And then so when we think about going down into the ocean, because only 20% of the ocean has ever been mapped, so we have 80% unknown, or we think about going into space, these are two very, very hostile and not friendly like environments that are just going to not be welcoming. So I think it's a really good question, because it's the similar way. How does society and how does the media and how do we react when people die when they're climbing Everest? For me, it's the same thing.
I agree.
Costs a lot of money. Only a select people are going to do it or even have the access to. Do we shame them? Should they get the media that they've gotten? In many ways, we're going to look back at this submersible situation for years. We're all going to remember where we were when we first heard about it. It's kind of captured the global attention. And I was in the I'm in Bogota right now, and I was in a taxi yesterday, and the guy and I were talking about it. He was like, "Oh, I'm fascinated. I just drive my taxi, and all I do is listen to news about it. I've been following it." And
the Titan, he's been following the Titan.
Yeah, the Titan. And I guess the thing I want to say before I pass the mic to Aussie is that the media really sucked into this. They really dove in, especially if they knew on Sunday.
How far did they dive?
How far did they dive? Well, they went about 2.5 miles down.
About 3,500 meters.
Yeah. We still need 2 more lords or gods from Aussie before we can change subjects. So we'll see how far we have to push them. So anyways, I just thought the media really soaked this up. And I don't know. I'm going to pass the mic to Aussie, but before I do, I'm going to call out Trevor's comment. He says, the emoji was for the jokes earlier, not this topic, by the way, just clearing that up.
Grown, yeah.
Crushing it always, as always, guys.
Like
it was
pressure at 3,000.
Yeah, I was like Titan at the bottom of the ocean. It was crushing. Aussie, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll take the mic for a sec. I mean, I think... it's very hard to keep a straight face this Friday morning. But one thing that I think probably fed this whole media circus was the fact that it was at the Titanic. The Titanic is already in and of itself a massive kind of story and marquee piece in human history. And so kind of having the two things combined together makes it just that much more feeding for the media. If we're thinking about space, and people spending $2 million to get on a SpaceX flight, there's essentially zero chance that we have the infrastructure in place to go rescue those people. We don't have a rescue force for someone out on the moon or anything.
Yeah.
And so when there's a chance that that they may be alive or that we can save them, then it just feeds the media and everyone buying and trying to bite and just what's going to happen, edge of your seats. Whereas if someone's out at Mars, Elon somehow reaches Mars with his SpaceX flights. Unless society and the military has evolved dramatically and we have space jets like Star Wars flying around space all the time, the chance of actually rescuing them in time is next to zero. And so it's done.
I disagree. I actually think Elon, if an astronaut got lost out in SpaceX, if something went wrong, they're already in spacesuits and they'll bail out. The redundancies. So, and this is why, so let's go back to making fun of this situation. And sidebar, Lindsay says she hasn't had this much fun since the Evergreen got stuck in the Suez Canal. And the jokes that could come out of that could be nuts. But this one did have sadder implications. I'm super pleased with how Twitter tied it to the Orca revolution. And for those who don't know, orcas have been coordinating in their attacks on ships, which is hilarious. And she said, Titanic said, I got one more in me. Who put me on LinkedIn? I'm here to break all of you.
Lindsay's bringing her Twitter degen energy into LinkedIn.
And I'm here for it.
I'm here for it too.
I'm here for it, man. So I think what's up with the jokes? This does have sadder implications. People are dying. If someone had died, in the early Apollo missions. If someone had died the first manned flight to on SpaceX, it would have been tragic. But I actually believe the care with which we go to space versus the carelessness that this guy seemingly took people down, like the story of him firing an engineer who was telling him this was not safe. If you saw the internal cabin, I told Marissa, I was like, I don't care who you is. There is no way on God's green earth if someone would have given me a tour above ground of this thing. No windows, video camera only.
One window. It had a looking glass.
Oh man, let me tell you something. I've seen submersibles go down, and you had to sit in this thing and cross your legs. I literally would have built one of these in my living room out of cardboard once to watch kids watch cartoons. Like, I mean, this thing seemed like it was not well put together. And when I think about space, it's like there's so many redundancies. I'm willing to bet cold hard cash the first time we lose a private citizen on a SpaceX flight on the International Space Station, I'm willing to bet money we will never lose where they're at. I believe that we might not rescue them, but the rescue attempts that occur, we will at minimum never lose track of where they're at. The space technologies we have for tracking is nuts. And that's not a testament to necessarily how Titan and OceanGate was and Titan was. The ocean is like its own. I mean, it is. We can make fun of that. But the ocean is like a whole nother beast that I really think we do not understand.
I'm just thinking that, if, in some ways, Titan was just a PEPE. It was just a shitcoin,
Okay.
Then it might come up at any moment, at least 10%.
I'm giving you the fourth, good Lord.
You got the fourth out of him.
And what it is, and it is like PEPE from this regard, we all pretend we're not watching it because we're better than that. We're focused on the ball. We're watching what Congress is pushing through while they're trying to distract us with this. We're trying to stay focused on other things. The truth is we're watching PEPE Titan all day long.
PEPE Titan. I'm actually surprised someone hasn't dropped a Titan coin, and it's
someone
just
needs to check. Lindsay,
you're
here. She would be cued in if there was a PEPE Titan coin or a Titan coin. Please do let us know.
Not hashtag OceanGate coin.
Yeah, the Titan OG coin.
Comparing who's the degen now?
I mean, Grant up there is definitely the degen.
FYI, my PEPE is still up nearly 50%, so I'm very happy.
It's
with
crazy that
the
Titan went down. The Titan went down quicker than PEPE.
Someone needs to start that meme. And Sneck is still around, I think. Sneck. That's the Cardano.
Okay, good Lord.
Okay, I also want to say right now that I do feel there's a part of me that feels bad for like the fact that 5 people have lost their lives.
Of course.
But the other part of me knows that they signed documents saying if they die, they can't sue the company. And they were also highly, highly aware of the risks. And this is luxury adventure, right?
Sure.
It's not like a commercial airline that's carrying families and people that are just trying to go from A to B that goes down in the mountains, right? Yeah. They chose this path, right? And the flip side of it is if it had worked and they had come back, right? The CEO of that thing, his stock would have improved 10x because he would have proved concept.
They've done this a few times. This is not
they've done it a bunch.
They've done it a bunch?
Yeah. This is not the first time.
It felt like it was amateur hour.
Well, that's the thing. This is what makes this luxury irresponsibility. For example, if I were to do Everest today, if I were to do Everest when I was, say, 10 or 12, or I'm sorry, in 92 or something like that, people would be like, that's pretty impressive. But if I were to go to Everest now, and if you've seen the photos, there's like a line of hundreds of people lined up. You would be like, oh, that's cool. But so what? If you were a John Glenn pushing the edges of our known universe,
sure,
that's different. There's like a nobility to that I'm like, but if you have luxury, and I call it luxury irresponsibility because, skydiving is one thing, hang gliding is another. These are pretty tested technologies, and he has gone down multiple times with this, but the multiple times taught them that this thing is not safe, and that kept coming back. And so it's like, well, if you got $250K to burn to take you and your kid down and to take extraordinary risk, and just because you've done something a lot doesn't make it not risky. It means like you've gotten lucky. Yeah, so we do need to pass this to Gensler next, and Gensler can then do his
Victor, GM. Good to see you, Vic.
Morning, Victor. So of all the things that are unstable in all this, I think it's time to talk about stable coins.
No, wait. We got to get one more out of Aussie. Aussie,
man.
No, I gave you 5. I gave you 5.
Did you give us 5?
I gave you 5.
Yeah, he gave us the groan.
I'm sorry.
The groan meter came out. For sure.
The groan meter.
Oh my god.
I feel like we should create like an animation of like just a countdown on top of like me groaning or something.
We literally never need to pass anything to Gensler. Well, when we need something regulated like submersibles to the Titanic or good old common sense, we know who to go to. It's Gensler.
To be fair, Gensler, if the Titan were PEPE, real PEPE, Gensler would have already, securitized it to the moon. So,
oh yeah, man. Maybe we could fractionalize it somehow. Well, I guess it's already pretty fractional.
Oh, it's fractionalized.
Holy!
It's one of the biggest rug pulls of all history.
Did you see that natural reaction?
Aussie can't handle it. Aussie's got his nice little government job where he can't say anything bad. And we have to push Aussie to a point where he just goes off camera. He's just gone.
He's got to turn the camera.
Just disappears.
Just in case his fellow Canadian government workers with their Canadian sensibilities are like, holy shit, who are these guys?
Sensibilities.
Yeah, man.
When I think of Canadian sensibilities, I feel like a really pious Southern family from like the 1930s.
Literally, but not like Florida Southern, more like Arkansas, Mississippi Southern.
Yeah, no, like Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
Like marrying your cousins,
or going to church with clutching your pearls. What are you talking about?
Marrying your Aussie automatically goes to incest when he thinks about the U.S. South. He has no idea what goes on down there. That's the first thing that came to him.
He didn't talk about fried chicken. He didn't talk about like sweating. He didn't talk about.
Look, he left. We did it. The Friday free for all is real. Anyways, let's talk. Now, Aussie's going to say when he comes back that apparently his cat pulled the plug because his cat apparently pulls plugs on his hard drive or whatever.
And maybe that's maybe that's just like his symbolic gesture towards the cat, the dead cat bounce. Let's talk about, you know who doesn't have a dead cat bounce is the Titan. Let's move on to stable coins.
Holy crap.
Let's move on to stable coins.
Yeah. If the Titan was a stable coin, it depegged.
He came back on when we finally transitioned to stable coins.
I was like, I need to regain some sanity here.
He was crying. He didn't want to be seen crying on mic. Aussie, why don't you change the subject here and talk about stable coins? Yeah.
Why are we talking about stable coins, Aussie?
We're talking about stablecoins for a lot of reasons.
Start?
Government oversight.
Oh, okay.
No. No. Gensler was secretly behind the Titanic and the Titan.
I'm just living out my destiny. What is being regulated, really?
Nothing is being regulated at this moment, but Jerome Powell was before the Financial Services Committee in Congress this week or late last week. And he made some really interesting comments that are going to stick with the whole market for a little while and share an important thesis. Jerome Powell admitted, although not fully willingly, that crypto seems to have staying power, which was
his talk.
That was part of his testimony. So
yeah, he said
that was pretty. It was pretty
quite the sound clip.
Yeah. So he made that comment, and then he said that he considered stablecoins to be a form of money.
What is that? I saw this quote. What does that imply, really, though?
It means that it's being seen as currency, and currency therefore has regulations, and it could essentially destroy the BUSD case against Paxos. And But it also means that the regulation of stablecoin companies could become a lot stricter because they're producing currencies.
Well, I mean, because they're
that's
producing currencies and it's illegal to produce a currency in the United States.
Unless you're the Fed, unless you're the mint or whatever.
Or another country, if you're Japan.
Sure.
Yeah. So
when are we just going to create our own virtual
a
country?
U.S. current, unless they consider it still U.S. currency, and then they regulate you like a bank. It's like a central bank essentially. So there's kind of different takes on where we can go with this. You can pick your poison.
Victor says the only way US dollar will survive or try to is to take over the stable coin that way they will make the fees Tether and others make. Are we talking about the CBDCs? Or no, they'll take over stable coins and they're just going to take a haircut or a shave off of each of these transactions. I don't know. I think that's the degen's dream. Right? It's the degen's dream that the US dollar is on the ropes, so much so that they've got to take over stable coins, but like
they will take over stable coins. I think he is right. I think Victor's right on point here. Stable coins, in a sense, by calling stable coins a form of currency, he's taking that jurisdiction away from the SEC.
Sure.
And laying the groundwork for setting regulation for the launching of the US CBDC.
Well, but I often say this: you don't have to, be upset at an X in order to break up and move on. You're allowed to just say, "Hey, listen, I don't think this is working out. Let's move on." And you don't need to nitpick them, right? We don't have to tear down stable coins to make a case for CBDCs. You make a case, stand on your case, make your regulations, make your regulatory environment. But what you're saying is they're making the argument that we got to create all this regulation for stablecoins to make it a safe runway for our CBDC, so it slides through and becomes the dominant currency right out of the gate. Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, because the whole thing is they're essentially assuming that people that are using digital currencies, so digital dollars in USDT and USDC, will not easily transition to CBDCs or willingly transition to CBDCs.
So I want to push back on this whole thing because I think that to the average person, I don't think they're going to know the difference between a CBDC and the current dollar that they have because most dollars are digital. That's my full opinion.
I'm not talking about a regular retail investor. I'm talking about crypto investors, people that are actually using digital dollars in the cryptocurrency sense, stable coins, people that are currently in the space.
Okay.
A retail investor doesn't matter. They have no clue what's going on.
And by the time they adopt, it'll be just so abstracted. It'll look like Jarrett's saying, it'll look just like my credit card. It'll look just like dollars. But I mean, are there that many degens? Are there that many crypto users that he has to kind of push that tide back first before just moving on to retail?
I think there's enough, especially considering the fact that you've got Tether, who made over $1 billion, 1 point something billion dollars last quarter in profits, and you've got USDC, which has been growing in market cap. Like you've got companies worth billions of dollars in the stablecoin game right now, and therefore you do need to lay that groundwork a little bit.
Should we just blow it up? Jarrett, what's your thoughts? No, Jarrett, you got a sour face. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is, I wonder if this conversation will seem so weird. This conversation will seem really weird in a couple of years when CBDCs are out and it just seems like nothing. And I don't know. It's like the similar conversations that I'm sure happened throughout human history when people went from probably in the 70s when credit cards became a thing. And people are like, oh, now they're going to have digital dollars and now they're going to be able to control us. And if they don't like us, then they can block our credit cards. And I don't know. I guess I wonder how salient this conversation is because I just think that for most people, and like I know Aussie's pointing out the crypto user, but I don't even think the crypto user is going to care, because I think like as we move into a more crypto focused global economy, I don't even think people are going to want to deal with stable coins, or they're going to try to avoid them as much as possible. I guess. I don't know.
And I think we would have made our bags. Now, Tether, our infrastructurally, what we were talking about the one show when we talked about Tether and how integrated it was into like sexes and dexes and lists right. and just transactions. I mean, there's some scary architecture that if they go after stables, like there's some major architecture issues that we have to deal with. But by the time retail investors are moving and all the regulations necessary for that, I think I said this once, those people like us, the Lindsays, even the NLCs and people like us who are crypto literate, everything we know how to do is going to go the way of the dodo. But what I mean by that is it's going to go away to retail people, but we'll know how to VPN, we'll know how to trade, and so we'll be able to continue to make bags, but it will be so narrow, a narrow pass that others just won't even care about. They're going to do business as normal. They won't even think like, oh, finally, my cafe accepts Bitcoin. They won't even think about it. I don't think that that's going, not in the West or the developed, the global North. I think the global South we'll see a whole different narrative going on in the global South. Go ahead.
We've been talking. I've been in part of some conversations, especially if we've been talking about the ETFs, about clean Bitcoin and dirty Bitcoin, and how that's going to become a conversation in the future.
People be making some shit up everywhere they can. What are we talking about? Clean or
Aussie, I've heard this too, that people in the future, just like we have clean coal, I heard, and they're going to be like, well, this Bitcoin was mined with all solar, or this Bitcoin.
No, that's not the conversation I'm talking about. That's not.
Okay,
that's
not
ESG, not ESG type stuff, but clean Bitcoin, as in Bitcoin that has been bought via the ETFs, that was bought directly from miners. So provenance is exact provenance of the Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin was mined by so-and-so company. It was bought directly by BlackRock, and then you were able to acquire it by buying the ETF.
What I need to know is what is being labeled good and what.
What's clean and what's dirty?
Is this essentially clean provenance? We can prove that it wasn't from money laundering. So by basically BlackRock can prove that they bought it directly from a miner, whereas some of the Bitcoin we bought that's been sitting on chain for a while. Lindsay, bring up Lindsay's comment. Essentially, ethically sourced Bitcoin /
I just don't think this is a thing. I don't think this is
non-money laundered Bitcoin.
I don't think this is a thing at all.
How can you prove? Okay, so we have the immutable ledger. Go ahead, Jarrett. Answer that question.
So Aussie's saying this is how we prove it, right? You get it. You have a mining company in Texas, and BlackRock's just going to go right to the miners, and after they mine the Bitcoin, they're just going to buy 300 Bitcoin that day, for example. And then that way they can always show on chain, no one else, this Bitcoin has never touched any nefarious actor. We got it straight from the source. We literally went to the well, got the water, and now we're holding, and then you're buying an ETF for the water. Now, I just don't think that matters. I really don't think that matters. Like 90% of US dollars have, like they say, residue of cocaine, but I'm not like, oh, does this have club cocaine on it? Can I not use it at Walmart? Like I just don't. I don't think it's a real thing.
Yeah. Why is your cover going to
hey,
to
Walmart? Excuse me. Does this Benjamin have any cocaine? This has never been on the back of a hooker, has it? I want to make sure. What's the purity of this yayo?
No, these are just not conversations.
I think it totally is conversations that are happening, because if you think about all of the accusations being made against Bitcoin, it's being used for fentanyl trade.
We know, but on chain,
but it doesn't matter.
Less than 1% of it is ever used. It is the worst thing. Okay, if you're listening to this and you don't know anything about crypto, do not use Bitcoin to buy fentanyl. Do not use Bitcoin to buy sex or anything that's going to be outside of the law wherever you are, because it is the easiest thing to track. right?
But let's ask some practical. Let's give credit to this argument of clean Bitcoin versus dirty Bitcoin. Let's ask this question, and this is why. And this series of questions that I already asked myself in my head led me to believe that it might be an initial conversation as we're trying to normalize cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, because it has the most likelihood of being pervasive as a cryptocurrency. We're trying to say what's okay, and how do we make this okay? So the series of questions are: we can track immutably every block and every ordinal and every use of crypto ever. We can track that, correct? So we can track, and maybe the person's anonymous, but nefarious deeds can be tracked. The FBI has tracked hackers, right? So if we can track it, and then we all agree to a clean Bitcoin only approach, everyone agrees, then we can see that a unit, a Satoshi, a unit of Bitcoin has been blackened on its soul. And that one now gets taken out of circulation. So now we have even more limited supply because we've all agreed not to get that Bitcoin. I think that we talk about anonymity of the person, but there's no anonymity of the currency. And I think if we knew how dirty our US dollars were because something hovered over that dollar as it was moving wallet to wallet, physical wallet, and we could see how dirty it was, we'd eventually go, meh, and like not care. And I don't think we want less circulation of sats, because isn't that what we're saying? Like eventually that particular token, well, let me ask that. Is the dirty argument that particular token has touched nefarious hands, we will never do business with it again? Is that the framework?
No, the framework is that potentially there's some Bitcoin that won't be able to be brought into the traditional finance system. So
really? It's the same effective thing that I'm talking about, though, right?
No, because you're not saying you won't do business with it, but there's the stuff that you can go buy your groceries with. There's the money there's the Bitcoin you can go buy your groceries with, and then there's the money that the Bitcoin that you're going to use that can only be used that is going to be used for things that are kind of outside of the system and will stay outside of the system because you can't prove origins.
Then how is that different than what I'm describing, where this is out of circulation now? What is its use? Let's ask it that way. How is it being used if not for regular use?
So I think I'm picking up what Aussie's saying now, and I guess I see it. It just feels like TradFi ESG bullshit brought into the crypto sphere. Not that I think ESG is bad. Like I do think we need to really focus on the environment. Like that's a freaking serious problem. But what Aussie's saying is, I'll have Bitcoin in the future where what this is, okay, Aussie, and I want you to tell me if I'm wrong. What they're trying to do is make their ETF their synthetic ETF more sexy than you just buying Bitcoin on an exchange.
It's shinier.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, because what they're trying to do is saying our Bitcoin is virgin, it is pure, it is the Virgin Mary.
Straight from the smelt.
And what you're doing is buying basically fractionalized things of that. You're buying NFTs, which are ETFs, of that Bitcoin instead of buying the Bitcoin because, the Bitcoin you would get from Binance or Coinbase has been in circulation for 6 or 7 years and has maybe been used even back on the day on the Silk Road. So you don't want that Bitcoin. What you want is our Bitcoin, but we're not going to actually sell you the Bitcoin. We're going to give you IOUs, which are called ETFs. That is the most TradFi wool over the eyes thing I've ever heard, and I hate it, but I see now why Aussie's saying it, and I do think it's actually a very serious conversation to have because BlackRock, if they get the ETF, they're going to sit down with regulators and say, we're only going to buy from miners. So that way, we're cutting out the nefariousness that everyone's worried about, the boogeyman that doesn't exist. All of this tells me all I'm going to do is keep stacking my Bitcoin. Everyone needs to just keep stacking Bitcoin because if they come up with this synthetic thing where they're going to sell IOUs, basically the traditional finance NFTs, that's what I'm calling ETFs now. I love this.
Yeah.
That's great. Just keep buying the real thing. Don't buy the synthetic product. Buy the organic.
Well, except the big problem is that slowly, because they're going to be buying directly from miners, the supply on Coinbase, on Binance, and anywhere else, because all of us are stacking sats, is going to dry up and it'll essentially disappear.
Oh, it's going to get bad. It's going to. I don't think one of the biggest video I had on YouTube, you guys know about it. It was that I just said 0.1 Bitcoin is a lot. That's all. And it got almost 50,000 views. And I wrote a subsequent Medium article on it. I don't think even sitting here now, we can grasp how much 0.1 Bitcoin is. I'm in Colombia. The minimum wage here is about $350. A 0.1, a tenth of a Bitcoin right now is about $3,000. That is the same amount if someone in Colombia more or less makes money for 9 months straight at minimum wage and doesn't buy food, shelter, water, go to the movies, pay for their Netflix, and they're just buying Bitcoin. If they do that, it would take them 9 months from today. I don't think the world is ready for how scarce Bitcoin actually is, if that's the thing where the game theory takes us and where everyone starts to put their money.
But I really do challenge, if there's serious dialogue, there's several major challenges. BlackRock ETF could say, hey, listen, all of my stuff is ethically sourced direct from George Pate, the miner, down. Here's my NFT certification. And so it's pure, and they're going to start hoarding. And now other people will follow suit because it has, let's say it has a premium of 10% over spot value. So BTC is going for 20,000. And if it's ethically sourced, its value, or the ETF's value, is up, let's just call it 22.5 or 23,000. So there's a little bit of a premium. So what is the economic incentive? Everyone will then want ethically sourced. You're going to begin sidelining dirty BTC. It is becoming more scarce, but Bitcoin is scarce enough that I'm already, and I've said this before, I'm already concerned that it might have ETF or synthetic value, but this narrative that it's going to become a useful currency, there's very little to support that it has enough reserves to support velocity. When it comes to velocity of cash, like to actually have the accounting. Now, maybe sats become value enough, and the sats break down, and for a good long time, we have enough sats to support currency function of Bitcoin. But we're talking about an ETF function that if it's providing premiums of that large, people are going to just start hoarding it and making sure that it's clean Bitcoin. I actually think this is a fool's errand because it sounds noble. It does sound noble, but it's virtue signaling. It's bullshit virtue signaling.
That's all it is. And I think also, let's say that this happens, Grant, and I love the way that you said that. Let's say that Bitcoin is $20,000, but the Bitcoin ETF through BlackRock, because they're basically able to say, we buy it all from George Pate in Texas. He uses solar. It's green or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's at 22.5, but there's a premium because we go and get it and we do this and we're self-custodying it and all this stuff. I do think when the education of people catches up to what all of this is, that ETF will die, right? Sure. This is just this weird thing that is honestly the whole point, the whole idea, if you read the white paper, is about ownership. It's P2P ownership, not someone sitting in the middle of it and giving you a ticket and saying, you own this house, right? But it's actually mine, but you can look at it, right?
Sure.
This is the quintessential right click, right? You're right clicking a JPEG if you buy a Bitcoin ETF. And it blows my mind that so many people are going to do it.
You're getting quoted for that, man. Hold on. It's right clicking. Oh my God, I'm writing this down. You guys keep going, but I gotta capture this.
Yeah. Victor's thing with the chart actually was something my co-host and I talked about on Decentralized News. In 2004, when the first gold ETF was released, the gold price had been relatively stable for quite a while. And then since then, the price of gold has 2 or 3x'd since then. And so gold had been relatively stable around $400. Then the first gold ETF came out in November of 2004. And now gold's trading, well, right now it's trading around 1,800, but it's hit highs of 2,000. So 5x. And it did that very, very soon, almost immediately after the ETF came out. It took a little bit of time, but it grew pretty exponentially.
Is this ETF live? Is BTC live?
No, it's not live yet. No, they're not live yet.
It's still just a trust, and they're still building.
But they don't even have approval yet.
Yeah, they need approval. They need approval first, but it is. Grant, you want to bring up that chart that Aussie's talking about?
Yeah,
I think it's quite the visual. And I just commented on. I said Bitcoin ETFs are like NFTs or IOUs for Bitcoin. Synthetics are never as good as the real thing. Stack accordingly.
Where did you put this? What is this?
If you look at Victor's comment, he left a Twitter. It's the Twitter link. If you want to bring that one up, it's quite a good visual. And if that does happen to Bitcoin, it's going to be insane. It's going to absolutely be insane. And this is what I saw something similar, but I hadn't seen this chart, Aussie, and I think it's wonderful. But I think that we may never see a sub 20K Bitcoin ever again if the ETF passes, just due to what we've already kind of seen happen here with gold.
What year is this? This is 2004 was the first gold ETF we ever had.
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense. The internet was still kind of like, people were still like, is this going to work? I mean, this is in the year Facebook had dropped, right? When Facebook came out, no one thought it was real. Everyone thought, like, I thought it was real because I was 18 and in college, and I was like, oh, that's super cool. But like most people are like, oh, that's stupid. Right. So this makes sense. You really need the internet to be able to create the pathways for an ETF to kind of really flourish on a global scale.
But I mean, look at your happy faces after that chart. Mine is shock. And yes, if Bitcoin does this, Victor, that would be fantastic. But it's apples and oranges, right? Like, we know that crypto and Bitcoin are a new creature entirely. Like, we know this. And so when we see this chart, this I'm not going to call it like shilling or hype, but it is the closest thing to that, because this is an arbitrarily plucked chart. Is there any other ETF that launched on a commodity that didn't do this? Or is this the pattern for all commodities?
That's a great question.
That's a great question, but I think the reason why people pull the gold chart is because Bitcoin's often compared to as being digital gold.
I know.
That's the comparison. Do I agree that yes, this is absolutely plucking from like an arbitrary chart? Absolutely. We could look at the price of corn, wheat, or anything else and see those have slowly trended down. But that's because of agricultural policy, which I will not get into.
Speaking of agricultural policy, I watched the last 20 minutes of Trading Places last night just so I could watch their run on frozen concentrated orange juice. The movie with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy from the 80s, Trading Places, where they
I thought you were talking about this.
Yeah, where they screw over the Dukes at the end. And so I've been thinking a lot about agriculture and shorting and longing the market. But I do think that this is a very salient conversation. I see it now. There was a conversation that was similar in the past that was about more ESG, more about like green Bitcoin. And I remember it was just shot down. It was like, no, people aren't going to care. And one of the examples was just like dollars, like, oh, was this dollar? Hold on. Let me look at this dollar. Let me trace this dollar. Let me take 15 minutes to decide if this dollar was used to buy drugs or to pay for prostitution where it's not legal or to do something that's, not okay. And it's like, we're just not going to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, when there's something of value, we're just going to it's just going to pass hands. Right. Like,
well, I think
gold has passed down the generations, especially with the Spanish Empire, and it's cost a lot of blood and people still have it. Right. Like, it's still valuable. It still has utility.
Yeah. And I think that the dream, again, there's like the degen dream, right? And we all share a stripe down our back like a skunk that we still maintain a lot of degen dreams, right? And the degen dream is that, okay, let's say we do come up with a protocol that can filter it. Let's say there's no legislation. Let's just say that there's an app. Lindsay says she's got a dip, but happy Friday. Lindsay, let's see your face more. I see you soon over on Twitter, but do come back to LinkedIn. Like, help us break things a little bit. We love it. But like the degen dream is that there's an app that just throws up a signal that when I'm about to make a transaction, I don't have to do 15 minutes of research, Jarrett. I can just clickety-click and go, you know what? This doesn't have a chain of origin that I'm happy with. And I can make that decision in the moment. We can say through centuries of observation that when humans have incentive, greed reigns. and greed of time. So we've got so many products at the store that say organic, that say raw, that say whatever. When was the last time? Now, maybe Jarrett, Mr. Vegetarian over here, who doesn't eat monkey brains, will actually look. But like the rest of us are like, is it grass fed? I don't know. Is it dead? Like, that's what I want to know. And if, and yes, then I can eat it.
Do you eat live animal, Grant?
No,
I'm really worried
want
about
it to
you.
be dead. Just check the pulse, make sure it's gone and cooked well done, and I'm good. And that's because I just don't have the time. So the DGen dream is that apps do help. Blockchain plus AI plus solid smart contracts, I think, can make these things more convenient to live on our virtuous selves. But bros, realistic, that's what I want. And we should argue about it. What should we do? Should we have green Bitcoin? Yeah. Should we have clean Bitcoin? Definitely.
So I don't think we need any of those things. I think Bitcoiners and Bitcoin mining is all moving towards green energy strictly just because that's where the profit is.
Yes.
It's just cheaper. So I think the incentives are aligning, and I don't know if we necessarily need any of that. And I don't think, for me, it's not a dream. I just want to use Bitcoin the way I use it. Like, I don't want to know if this was tied into some Silk Road transaction that happened back in 2013. Like, it just is value for me. I don't want to know. I mean, if it is the new digital gold, and I think that that's also flawed a little bit, then here it is in my hand, right? Here's my gold, right? And I just want to give this to you for a house. I don't want you to be like, hold on. Let me look at the Carfax of your gold. Let me check the VIN number and check where it's been. Oh no, that was used for a slave trade in the 1830s. Now, sorry, we can't use that to trade for my house. Like, that's just not. I don't think humanity is ready for that, and I don't think humanity necessarily wants that in the way that I've seen thus far in history. The way that we exchange value and the way that we exchange value. I guess I don't really.
No, so I don't see it between Bitcoiners. I see it when we start talking regulation and we start seeing these ETFs be more common, and we see more like they become the topic of conversation. It'll be all
it's
about
like the marketing points of the synthetics, and they'll start banner waving different shit like that.
Exactly. I think it'll be because we've got the Elizabeth Warrens and everything making comments about how Bitcoin's used for fentanyl trade and yada yada yada. They're gonna have, that's gonna be their angle of attack. It'll be, hey, if you buy it from BlackRock, you're allowed to use it. If you don't buy it from BlackRock, it's dirty. You can't use that Bitcoin.
So
that
one
is
of the
scary
things,
and possible. Go ahead, Jared.
That is scary and possible. But one of the things I think that's going to happen is that if you think about who's naysaying crypto, show me someone who's naysaying crypto that's a government employee that's under the age of 45, right? Elizabeth Warren is going to die off. All the cronies are going to die off. Jerome Powell's an older dude. Gensler's maybe a little bit younger, but he's going to be ousted. He's the Julius Caesar of our time. He's going to get ete tu brute soon, and then he'll be gone. I do think that like all the old heads
going down like Titan.
And I am going to be ageist here. I just think that like by the time they kind of fade away and they're no longer in our public discourse, like Elizabeth Warren, and I think education catches up on a massive scale. I just totally think that, if people are going to be able to then really make the conscious decision to choose just owning true Bitcoin as opposed to an ETF. Because the reason why the regulators want the ETF is so that way they can track it, because they know you can't put an ETF into cold storage. That's it. They want to be able to claw it back. We're going to get into a situation. I was listening to Balaji and Tom Balaji talking about this, where it's like in the 1915, if you had been like, hey, do you think the government's going to come steal your gold? People are like, hell no, they're not coming into my house. Well, we fast forward, and it was like 1930. It was after the
First World War.
No, the financial crisis after 1929, when the world ended financially. It was in and around there where FDR was like, yeah, okay, I want your gold, right? But the point that Balaji was making is just that, like, we can't foresee some of the ridiculous. Yeah, Aussie can't handle this conversation. We can't foresee some of the more ridiculous things that the government may try to do, and I think that is one of the crazier things about Bitcoin that maybe the government doesn't like, or crypto in general. That you can just have your seed phrase, you can memorize your 12 words, and how's the government gonna get that from you? It's not your house, which they could eminent domain. It's not stocks, which they could easily rip out from wherever you're holding that from the third party if they subpoena. It's something that you actually own, and it's in cyberspace and it's encrypted. That's I think the biggest threat that Bitcoin, if we're focused on Bitcoin, crypto too, maybe on a whole. And I don't believe that this is a conspiracy at all. I think that we've seen this in the past. So it's not something, you would have said in 1915, Victor, on our live show, that it would be a conspiracy theory for someone to say, oh, the government's going to come take all your gold and buy it at a certain thing and then, put it in Fort Knox. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I think about what are the economic incentives, aka greed. Where is the greed? And I do think you're right. I think these incentives these synthetics will take hold. I think that they will become more popular for retail people, which I mean the masses, to say, oh, I've got some crypto exposure. And we're going to be over here going, purists. We're going to have our own version of what we called diamond hands versus paper hands, but it's going to be like OGs versus retail or something like that. And we're going to have our own version of that. But meanwhile, the government is going to back these BlackRocks and the like, because it is synthetic, and anything synthetic can be tracked. And I think the ideals of crypto, I think their goal is to quash the ideals of crypto, and create not to stifle them like in a war, but to create just enough drag, just enough resistance for you to buy a basket of apples with sats that it's just annoying. And if they can do that, if they can kill, and this is, I'm telling you, money is about velocity. If they can kill velocity, you can't use it.
So, I mean, the IMF just came out and said they don't think that banning crypto in the long run
it's going to be good for countries.
They don't think it'll be effective.
We need to meme this. Like, these sorts of one-liners, even taken a little out of context. If you catch Powell saying, I view crypto as money, well, there's context to that. You know what? Forget it. Take the snapshot, take the screenshot, quote it, link to it, let someone read it for themselves. But these sorts of things need to be posted out there. The IMF, these sorts of things need to be posted out there, because the narrative we need people who are thinking like these marketers, but pro Bitcoin. Not because I necessarily believe Bitcoin should be the currency of the future globalized world necessarily, but I think there's enough negative pressure that it needs some degree of positive pressure, just so that it doesn't get outright outlawed. So that there's still a bastion of places to custody yourself if you so choose. And so I think that would be huge. If you could hit us with that link or wherever you saw that, any headline on that, Aussie, that would be big. Well, lo and behold, we made it to the top of the hour. And I don't even know when I stopped tracking the time, guys.
I haven't been paying attention to the time most of the time.
Yeah. It's like you were in a bubble under the ocean. It's just, can't even know what time of day it is. It gets away from you.
Victor, I need to ask you, do you have any degen, anything degen you want to recommend to me now?
Oh my God. Get ready for the flood. You ready?
Here it comes.
I'm so ready.
I'm queuing up. You just need to pop off, Victor, and let us know your degen plays.
I need to know about all of them.
Yeah, man. In summary,
will make me $1 million by next week.
Not going on submersible vacations.
Yeah, not investing in OceanGate. It's also okay. It's also, its name is OceanGate. We use blank gate to describe anything conspiratorial in our society since Watergate. I just think maybe people should have seen that.
Yeah, the writing on the wall. Well, let's do some shout outs, boys. Aussie, what do you got?
I'm going to shout out my brother who literally just left on a great vacation for the whole summer. He's working in Switzerland with his girlfriend. and he just got there. It's his birthday today, so shout out to my brother.
What type of work are they doing?
They're working in an international day camp. Well, stay away camp. So,
wow, that sounds fun.
Oh, it's a great time. I did it when I was 21. So,
my shout out. Oh, here we go. Flow. It's legit at an all-time low. Was $38 and is now at 53 cents. We got to be careful. Not financial advice, of course. I own Flow. I know someone who works at Dapper Labs. I like the idea of Flow. They have a lot of killer projects. However, they were explicitly named as a security. So be forewarned. I will continue stacking myself on Flow, Victor. But be forewarned. Like, this is one of those that they're in this lawsuit. Now, that might get dropped, but we'll see. And of course, Victor says the right thing here. That's one of my plays, not financial advice. My shout out is to Lindsay Poss, who has descended from Twitter fandom and showed up on LinkedIn to degen shit a little bit and make me laugh. So I am grateful. That's my shout out today. And besides, I didn't have a Titan joke, you know.
My shout out is to anyone this weekend that's going to watch the Titanic.
Oh my God.
There it is. Got him. I got him. There it is. Number 6. Make sure if you liked our show, or even if you didn't like our show, come back and watch it again. We'll be here every Tuesday at 3:30 Eastern and every Friday at 10 a.m. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube at Not Crypto Bros. So we will see you Tuesday at 3:30.